Welcome to this webcast on enterprise automation and AI. So today we will cover some very interesting topics, amongst them some of the key learnings from one of the industry leaders in this area, Ericsson, and most welcome to Rickard Wieselfors, who is heading the automation and AI unit at Ericsson. Your journey has been covered in a lot of analyst reports and articles throughout the years. And we are super thrilled to have you here. Welcome, Rickard.
Thank you very much, Theo, and thank you very much for having me here.
And just to set the scene here a bit, so Ericsson has been covered as a best practice in large-scale automation and AI on an enterprise level. And you have been covered in Gartner and Horses for Sources and a number of articles throughout the world in this specific topic. So first, Rickard, when we work with AI and automation on an enterprise level, we have two key learnings at Turbotic. One is to have a very defined process and a thought-through process of how to work with this program. And the second is to actually be able to scale. You have to work with more than one technology. So it's not only RPA, it's not only low code or only AI. What's your comment on that?
Thank you very much, Theo, and thank you very much for having me here today. Very interesting topic for me, which is very close to my heart. So we start with a structured process first, and here I think it starts with a mindset, really. To think about not what can be automated in my process, but how can I automate the whole process. And that mindset, I think, is extremely important when you talk about automation and AI. And the second thing, which is very important, is to think radically different. How can I automate full workflows and not only tasks? And that is a bit tricky. And typically when you start your automation journey, perhaps you should start with task automation, and that's okay. But it's very difficult to get out the full potential by only doing that. Mm.
So any comments on the process itself? Is it? I mean, we can see a lot of companies trying to do this. It's quite many times it starts with the POCs, and it's difficult to scale because they don't have this thought-through process and systematically approach towards implementing this in the organization. What's your key learnings there?
No, the way we have addressed this is to try to think big, start small and scale quick. And our learning is that it's pretty easy to start small, to get a couple of robots in place. But to get 100 robots in place and get that scaling with security, with low cost of ownership, with stability, etc., that's quite difficult. But you need to scale. Otherwise, it will be too expensive and you won't be able to drive radically different transformation and workflow automation if you don't manage to scale. So that is a challenge. Not only for us it's been difficult, but for the whole industry. That's what we see when it comes to automation and AI.
And regarding the technologies, that when we talk about automation, there's a lot of focus around RPAs in various forms or AI, you know, to implement that and to be more intelligent. But our lessons learned, as I said, is that it's when you start combining these technologies and crossbreed them, that is actually when we can see the leverage on the investment on this. What's your learnings there?
Yes, if you're going to get full workflow automation radically different, then it's not only the mindset or to re-engineer the processes, but to be able to do that, it's not enough with, for example, robotic process automation. Many companies start with only robotic process automation. Perhaps the IT department is driving that, but that will only be piecemeal task automation. It's a little bit like having a screwdriver for everything when you're building a house. Our learning is that you need a portfolio of AI automation technologies, and the different technologies we have in our portfolio is, of course, robotic process automation, both attended or non-attended, as it's called. It's machine learning, of course. That's a key one, where you build your own machine learning algorithm through your own data scientists. Low code is another technology which we see a lot of value in. Others are, another big one is cognitive. It's a bit difficult, but instead of, for example, calling to an individual to a call center, you call to a chatbot and get help from that. That is a big technology, quite difficult, but very valuable. So that are examples of technologies we are using in our tool suite to be able to drive radical transformation.
So we have seen two patterns here. One is that it's especially talking RPA or AI, it's the core functions that benefits the most. So it's finance, it's IT department, it's HR, it's sourcing. That we can get fastest up to speed with these technologies and to start the transformation. What's your experience there?
Yes, especially if you come to a little bit more advanced technologies like cognitive and machine learning. What is fundamental to succeed with them is that you have the data management, the data governance in place, and typically you have that in the finance department. But also when it comes to robotics, very much what robotic process automation is about is to automate repetitive tasks. And where do you have a lot of repetitive tasks? Yes, you have that in those kind of functions. But what we see as well is that in our core business, which is perhaps different from other businesses, is that it's equally relevant in that, which is, for example, rollout of base stations, supply, etc.
So another topic that we discuss a lot at Turbotic and also with our customers is what combinations are the best of these technologies. Combining, for example, we can see that combining RPA with OCR is quite effective, or OCR with AI is also quite effective. But I know that one technology that you have been working with is blockchain, for example, and that is something that it's quite a few use cases out there. But I know that you have been successful in at least a few cases. Can you say anything about that?
I can start first with the different technologies, and the OCR and RPA. That's an obvious one, so we are driving that as well, and also RPA. Low-code machine learning is a good combination, and that's another factor which we think is valuable for driving radically different and have good return on investments to combine the technologies. But it's quite difficult. When we come to blockchain, we are in the beginning of that journey, but that I think has really good business cases when we get that scaling. But we are not in the scaling phase yet. We have run a couple of cases which are very good, I would say, but that journey needs to continue until we have full scale.
Of the technologies that we mentioned, which one are the easiest to scale, would you say?
Easiest to scale is a bit tricky to say, because all of them are quite difficult to scale. But the easiest to start with, I would say, is what we call attended or unattended robotic process automation. What is meant by attended robotic process automation, that means that you as an individual have your own robot. Unattended robotic process automation, that means that it's done in the background and you don't take responsibility for it. It's automating a whole process. And that is very good to start. That's very easy for any department, it could be a finance department or whatever, to start to get some robots in place. So that's very easy to start with. But to scale it to have hundreds or 500 robots, that is quite tricky, because then you need a platform for that, you need security, and you need also the stability when you change the underlying systems, etc.
So one thing that we also discuss a lot is to kind of build a best of breed portfolio to work with the best vendors in each category, to not lock yourself into only one vendor or one solution. And what's your take on that?
No, we truly believe in that, and we have worked like that for 4 years. So we have basically an emerging tech innovation unit who is out there scouting all the time for best of breed in these different 8 technologies we are using. And the way we look at this, we try to get partners in these different technologies which we work together with and grow together with. And I truly believe that that is a way to do it. When you drive the transformation, then you're coming with a full portfolio. And that's very difficult also to do that for individual departments. As I said before, if you have a finance department or whatever, it's easier to download some robots. But to have this full portfolio, then you need an operating system or a platform to supply that to the different businesses or customers, depending on.
But isn't it quite expensive to make all these investments in all these technologies and vendors and best of breed?
Yes, I would say it's not easy, and I don't know many companies who have done it. If we talk to Gartner, it's not that they see so many out there who has built an operating system like we have done. But if you look from our perspective, automation in AI is in our core strategy. And I think it's going to be more and more for most companies that. And if you believe these are exponential technologies, then we are only in the beginning of this journey. So if you build a platform and invest in that you can reap the benefit over the next 5-10 years, I think, even if you don't keep the same vendors or whatever. And then I think one very key point, if we talk about vendors, is to build up your own machine learning capabilities in form of data architects, data scientists, etc., which we have done. So it's not only to use third-party vendors in this kind of operating system. You need to have your own machine learning or data scientists. That I think is a fundamental ingredient in this kind of platform.
So the $1 million question is obviously how do we measure the value realization or the return of investment of this? I mean that is it's easy to make a lot of investments and to hope for a bigger transformation, but at some point you need to start measuring all the investments you make in the area, right? So what's your take on that? How do you measure the value enablement or the value realization? Because I guess that's two different things, right?
Now, and this is an area where we have invested quite a lot in from the beginning, and we have a whole value realization office. And there are different KPIs, of course, but one obvious one when you talk about automation is freed up hours. Because basically what automation is about is to leverage your own staff in a better way. That means that instead of doing a lot of repetitive, boring tasks, you could let the robots do that, and your own staff could do more value added things. And it's not necessary that the staff needs to leave the company and you got cost out. It can be equally good that you retrain people to do something else. And that's why we have a KPI called freed up hours, because that is the important measurement. So that is an obvious one. And that you can aggregate if you have 500 robots, and you can aggregate how many freed up hours do you have in general. But there are also other KPIs which I think are fundamental, but it's a little bit more difficult to aggregate. It's around quality. In a lot of cases, we see that the quality improve a lot. Instead, especially if you talk robotic process automation, instead of having people do a lot of boring manual things where you do errors, the robots, they don't do any errors. Another thing is, of course, the lead time. That it's much faster when you have a machine learning or blockchain or whatever than individuals doing it. And a fourth one, which we measure a lot, is customer or user experience. Now it's much a war for talent out there. You need to attract the best people, and the best people don't want to sit and do boring tasks. So for your employees to have a better experience at work has a huge value, but even more it's the experience from your customers. So all these KPIs are something we measure constantly.
And how often do you measure the KPIs? Is it on a daily basis, a weekly, or monthly, or is it even real time?
Yeah, no, it's a bit. This is something we need to work with to automate this completely. But what we do, just to be very practical, is that we send out weekly reports on all these KPIs, sort of. But they are not perfect at that stage. But quarterly, we measure exactly what is the freed up hours we've done this quarter, and we also have targets on that. How many processes have we affected with customer increased customer experience, lead time, and quality. And then, of course, we look at the different cases when it comes to lead time, uptime, quality, and customer experience. That's difficult to aggregate on all automations.
So I know that you at Ericsson have worked a lot with the same kind of strategy and thinking as which is also behind the same philosophy and hypothesis we have at Turbotic, but we are trying to address it in a way to say it's getting more complex, it's more vendors, it's more measuring, it's more operating, and at one point you can really not you cannot do that manually, right? So our business case here is actually to kind of build a platform and an operating system around that. What can you say anything about the complexity that you experience now and in the future?
I think this will be more and more complex the more and more you scale this. If you have a hypothesis that automation, AI analytics, the way we call it AAA, will fundamentally change the way companies work, then you need to drive this in quite big scale. And then you can't have too much manual, for example, value realization mechanism. It can't be too much manual when you do discovery. If you can automate that or digitalize or whatever word you would use, then you will improve a lot the speed of driving this transformation.
Also, one thing that we are trying to address is actually monitoring the performance of all these technologies. And I mean, it might, some of the vendors are quite advanced in how to measuring, like one robot or their robots. But when you start combining them and you also start combining different technologies, I mean, it's a big difference to monitoring low code implementation versus RPAs. What's your take on that?
No, that's very important. And what we have is sort of a central control tower, you can say, with all the different technologies in. And as you say, you can buy these kind of control towers from the different vendors, but then you only get those technologies. So there we have put in quite a lot of work, but can still improve a lot to get this kind of control tower on the performance of the different technologies, as much value realization automated as possible. Have a lot of work to do that, but that is absolutely necessary if you're running these different technologies.
Thanks a lot, Rickard. Great talk. So just to wrap this up, what's the next big thing for Ericsson in this area? What are the next big bets, so to say?
I think a big bet coming now as well is the whole area of democratization as well. And that is that you can download your own robot, you can download your own analytics, your own data, etc. That is a big movement, which I'm thinking coming in the whole society. And another big thing is now to really move into flow automation, radically different. We are basically just starting that journey now, and it's taking quite a long time to get to that stage. But that I think is the next coming years. But I still think the technology stack we have will remain for the next 2-3 years.
And why would you say democratizing AAA is important? Why not stick with a center of excellence, doing all the implementation? Why is the democratization part so important for you?
I still think you need a central platform, a little bit like Spotify, with different categories of music, which you can say is different technologies. But people need to be able to download them themselves. And why do I think that? It's because we can't recruit unlimited amount of data scientists. It's much better if the subject matter experts, finance specialists, if they can be their own data scientists. It's much more effective and you get much better scale. So I think that's the ultimate reason if you can get it to that. But if you are democratizing, it's not without risks, and you need to be able to measure value from that. And that means that you need to look at your leadership on the company, your operating model, the way you organize. I think this will have huge implication if you wouldn't have a total anarchy out there. And we are not there yet in general in the society on how will the different companies be affected by democratizations. Before you can democratize, you need to understand how you can measure value, how you can keep security, stability, etc.
One last question to you. For a company that hasn't started their journey and come as far as you have, what would you say is the first thing that they should look into?
No, I can just say what a little bit what we did, but we started a little bit trying out robotic process automation because it's a good way of learning this new way of thinking of automation, because it's a bit of a different world. That's where I would start, and thinking both attended and non-attended. And then, of course, I would rather quickly move into some kind of machine learning and think about that potential, because there you have huge return on investments if you can get into more predictive analytics or machine learning. But that's more difficult, because then you need your data management, your data governance, and your data foundation in place.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Rickard. It's super interesting to hear your perspectives and key learnings. And thank you all for listening and watching this webcast, and make sure that you sign up for the whole series in the next coming weeks. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Rickard.
Thank you very much for having me.